Good evening. I see that we have opened up our public information forum on the Gary Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan effort. So I want to welcome everybody. We'll give it a minute or so and let folks join the meeting. I know Gretchen is working diligently behind the scenes to make sure everyone is able to get in, and I hope can see the screen that is in front of you that has a presentation. And I know we are also running on Facebook Live, which is pretty exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Again, we have a slide presentation in front of you. We will do our best to be thoughtful as we move through this slide presentation. We may have a guest speaker, so if we do, we will pause and let our guest speaker in to join us this evening. Couple of quick things. Rules of engagement. So many of you are joining us again on several means and platforms. Everyone is muted simply for the fact to control background noise and so that everyone can hear the presentation. So please don't take that as an affront. The idea is to use the chat feature as much as absolutely possible. Also, again, knowing we're on Facebook Live, being able to use that feed if you have questions or thoughts or comments as you go along, and we'll do our best to run through those at the end and answer as many of the questions as we possibly can. We have other ways to provide feedback this evening, and as we have throughout the project study process that we've been using, we have a dedicated email address, we have a dedicated website. This presentation will be posted to the website so that everyone will be able to see it, including the video. And social media channels. Also, I would say to those of you who are viewing the screen, I've got the main slide up, but I also have left the rest of the slides along the left-hand side so that you can see where we're going. And should you note a slide you would like me to return to, I'll be able to do that in an effective manner. So I'm Wendy Vacher. I am the project manager for Michael Baker International. We are happy to be on board supporting the city of Gary with this exciting bicycle and pedestrian master plan, a long time in the making, and we are making good progress. We have with us tonight Deb Bacchus. She is the project manager for the Gary Redevelopment Department and has been in the saddle from the beginning, doing her best to make this a successful effort on many fronts. Greg Jenkins is the planning director. He may be joining us this evening as well. Gretchen Sipp with Vocard is part of our community outreach team, and she is behind the scenes working Facebook Live and the presentation in the Zoom, a tireless job. And we also have other members of our team, including the Troyer Group, who is on board to do a lot of the technical analysis that we'll be talking with you about here tonight. So what is our agenda? So this is basically how we're going to move through the next hour or so. Make sure you understand the purpose of our meeting tonight, which is really to give you an update. Some of you have been with us since we started this process. We did have a public meeting in January, but for those that haven't been, that's okay. We'll make sure that everyone is up to speed about what we've been doing and be able to hear the new things that will be coming out in next steps. Generally, we'll discuss this progress. We'll summarize a lot of the existing conditions and survey results that we've had to date. We've had some really great participation, and many of you that are joining us tonight have participated or helped get the word out, and we really appreciate it. We'll give you an update on the development of the overall plan, give you a snapshot of some of the things that will be in this plan, and again, answer questions. This is the most important part of this forum, is to be able to make sure that we're communicating with you so that your thoughts and questions and ideas can be answered here tonight or in the future using another mechanism. And then we'll talk about how to prepare for next steps. So as I mentioned, we kicked off this process and this fantastic project back in August and got up and running very quickly. We were delayed due to COVID. Lots of things have been delayed due to COVID, but we've managed to really pick up steam, and over the last 6 months have made tremendous progress. You'll see this graphic again. This is kind of our timeline, right? Where are you in the process and where are we headed? So I hope that it's self-explanatory. And we'll talk through a little bit of the items that you see here on the screen. We do have a community advisory committee that's been very helpful. We'll talk about those folks. We've done several survey efforts on trying to reach people throughout the city. So we have a good geographic distribution and that we have a good representation of various kinds of households. We'll talk to you about that. We had our public meeting, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, first one in December, our first public forum. If you were there, great. If not, welcome now. And we have some other interesting things going on, such as our Google class that will be able to catch you up. And that is an ongoing effort, open until the end of April. So more on that. So a little bit of background for those of you who are joining us for the first time. We're going to run through a little bit of just the general context as well as an update. You know, many of you, again, I will say, have been with us, you know, since in 2019, we did a citywide comprehensive plan update. This was quite an undertaking, looking at the entire city, the existing land use, future land use, transportation projects. And one of the things that came out of that citywide comprehensive plan was the idea of this need to specifically hone in on bicycle and pedestrian movements and plans. We have such a great need. We have such a large city that we really felt like that was a natural continuation and next steps. And the good news is we're here because we got a grant to do just that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And the idea, you'll hear this several times, is our intention is to build upon the existing work and plans done to date, create realistic, actionable pathways forward. Okay, we want to think big, and we are, but we also want to honor small projects and things that can move along more quickly. So we'll talk about that. And again, at any time, if you are interested in the entire comprehensive plan, it is available for download. The link is here. We can also provide that to you in other ways. It's on our website as well as social media. You know, and as I stated, you know, the idea is to build upon the plan. That's what good planning does, takes us through a continuum. So we partnered with the Indiana State Department of Health for this grant to pay for this bicycle and pedestrian plan effort. This effort will provide greater access to funding sources. That is one of the predominant reasons that you do good plans, is so that you can go after funds to make these plans come alive. And this is no exception. We know without question when we started this process that there would be more money available to communities like Gary for health-related projects, including trails from a variety of sources and lots of other different kind of infrastructure projects. And lo and behold, 6 months later, that is proving to be true. For those of you who work in that realm, you will know that the various levels of government are working diligently to fund a variety of different kinds of projects. You know, building upon our previous planning efforts, you know, we're really trying to take what we know and hone it to understand more, to be able to drill down into the neighborhood level if necessary. So we can have with community focused engagement. This was a huge part of what is required for the grant and what is also important to all of you who are participating, whether you live here or you visit the city or use the amenities. And again, ultimately, we will culminate in a bicycle and pedestrian master plan that will be available for a variety of uses and will be adopted by a common council. So what do we know? Some of you have seen this before, but what do we know? Building on this, Gary's a big place. You know, 57 square miles of land here in the city of Gary, very large city footprint relative to Northwest Indiana. We have approximately 78,000 folks in our footprint, 80% African American. That comes into play a little bit later when we talk about public health statistics. 42% of our land is vacant. We have over 500 miles of sidewalk, some of it in generally poor condition, or perhaps located in places where people aren't walking anymore. Maybe they're walking somewhere else. We don't have any designated bike routes, and we have limited on-stream bike lanes. We have 13 miles of open trails, but some of those trails, which we'll talk a little bit more, have significant connectivity gaps. And that's a huge focus for the city and also as part of this plan. One of the great things we have is transit service. And I think in the coming years, you're going to hear a lot more about transit. We obviously have the South Shore. NICD line that runs from Chicago to South Bend with 3 stops in the city of Gary. Great opportunity. Talk more about that. And the Gary Public Transportation Corporation providing bus service, both locally for folks moving around within the city and providing regional connectivity to our neighbors in Hammond and Lake Station and other places. So I mentioned health statistics, and this is another difference in this bicycle and pedestrian plan, particularly it is partially funded with a public health grant. And it gives us an opportunity to hone into community health characteristics. And we weren't really able to do that as much as we wanted to during the 2019 comprehensive plan. And wow, did it turn out to be even more interesting now during doing a plan in the time of COVID. And that has presented challenges and interesting insights all at the same time. Folks on our community advisory committee deal with public health grants all the time, and these are statistics that they regularly use. And they will tell you that people who don't live here or aren't from here tend to be a little blown away by these numbers. They're constantly being asked to validate them, but yes, we are 80% minority. We are predominantly low income. We have, our population is approximately 18% disabled. We have a high poverty rate. We have food insecurity, diabetes, kidney disease, heart disease, hypertension. Now it sounds terrible, okay, but it's numbers, it's information, and it provides us with an understanding of why being able to look at bicycle and pedestrian planning is so important, and for many reasons, not just to get around, because we all need to get around, but also to be able to get out and about as much as we possibly can. To enjoy the city and to be able to promote healthy living. And there's absolutely a direct connection between health and exercise for all people in ages and abilities. So as we go forward, we don't expect all of you to be transportation and bicycle and pedestrian planners, but we do need to share with you some of the terms of our work so that when we say things or you read things in the future, you'll have a better understanding of what we're talking about. Transit-oriented development. If you read the paper, you've been following the South Shore development, you'll see this term quite a bit. And basically, we're talking about this idea of focusing, okay, around transit stations, providing amenities, making these transit areas places that are walkable, that are pulling in people, right, and pulling in services. The idea of first and last mile. This is also associated with transit and transit stops and train stations, AKA, how do I get to the transit stop? And then once I get off, how do I get to my next destination? That's that first mile, last mile. Safe Routes to School is a federal program to improve walking and biking to school. The city has a Safe Routes to School report from 2015. We're pulling that into what we're doing now and considering that as we move forward. It's also part of the grant. You'll hear terms like ADA and universal design. ADA being the Americans with Disabilities Act, and universal design being the street is available to everyone, regardless of how you might be getting around. Thinking about how people universally use the street. And in a post-industrial city like Gary, many of our street networks weren't built with that purpose in mind, and that's not unusual. But we know this is changing around us, and we'd like to propose that those changes happen in our city as well. You'll hear terms like complete streets and road diets. What does that mean? Well, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but we're talking about maximizing the use of existing roadways and right-of-ways that we already have. We do have an extensive local network to build upon in the city. We have key corridors that we know folks use more than others. Some of these key corridors are also transit corridors. You begin to see where these uses begin to become layered. We'll talk more about that. We want to maximize what we have. And then approaches like tactical urbanism. This is fun and very creative and offers an opportunity for community or volunteer-oriented neighborhood scale grassroots efforts. We talk about big projects which are exciting and can be regional and provide linkage, but neighborhood level projects are equally as important. And tactical urbanism allows you to try different things at a smaller scale to say, is this really what we want to do? And we'll talk more about that. So I mentioned complete streets and road diets again, the idea that the road is designed and operated safely for everybody to use the streets. Sometimes a road diet you'll see on the right-hand corner, on the right-hand side. Boy, pretty typical 4-lane street, got parallel parking on the right-hand side. You know, a lot of cities are repurposing these streets and saying, hey, are we really maximizing all this pavement? Maybe we put in a center turn lane and keep 2 travel lanes and add a bike lane to the side. Again, using the right of way in the road that you have in a different way. And being able to decide how you want that to look at your neighborhood scale. Again, tactical urbanism, you know, you can tell the photos on the right. Again, using things like paint, okay, and design, and how you just set up your corners or your outside areas to be able to be different than what they are now. It's a great fit for Gary because it's low cost. It allows you to temporarily try out ideas and get feedback from people whether they like it. And this approach is funded by several different kinds of organizations, including AARP, this Indiana State Department of Health, which helped fund this particular endeavor, are eager to fund these types of projects. So one of the things that we talked about and will continue to talk about is public involvement and outreach. Cannot underestimate the value of this. And it's amazing the response we've got. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about where we've been and what we've heard so far. And we've had a great reaction. Really, really proud of the team and the folks that have helped us, including our community advisory committee, who've been great. These are the folks that participate in our community advisory committee. We've had 3 meetings to date, one just a couple of weeks ago, talking about these very same topics and where the project is going. Many of these folks have been reflective and helped get the word out, and we've talked about various initiatives and health concerns with some of our folks that are participating here. So can't thank them enough for everything that they've done. I do believe GHA is on the phone with us as well, and I'm hoping some of our other CAC members are. And if you are, thank you. Oh, I see Jose. So I can thank Jose because I see his face. Yes, thank you. But any of you and all of you, if you are here and participating or hearing us, thank you. And we look forward to finishing strong with your support. We had our first public forum back in December, as I mentioned, you know, and kind of gave everybody an overview, but you're hearing the same information now. You're not left behind or you know, out of the game by any means, and we can always provide more information about how you can get involved. We've also conducted some key interviews with folks that we work on a regular basis, such as NERPC. The Gary Health Department was particularly enlightening. Shirley Hines Land Trust is doing some great things in the city partnership-wise. And of course, our Public Works Department and the Gary Public Transportation Corporation, David Wright, if he's with us here tonight, thank you, as always, for everything that you do with us. You know, we've used various techniques because it's an interesting time to be doing a study and it's an interesting time to be trying new things. So, you know, overall, we've had 400 total participants in our various survey activities. Pretty good. You know, we've been competing with some pretty hot topics over the last 6 months. So I feel good about the feedback that we've received. We did a MetroQuest survey, which is a digital online survey. Got some really great feedback from that, including some mapping inputs that we are using, and you'll see a little bit here later in the presentation. A survey monkey that included the ADA screen reader capability, which is wonderful. So we can reach, again, more people, being able to share their thoughts on their mobility. And good old fashioned paper, you know, sometimes that's what you do, or as we like to call it, analog. And we'd like to thank again GHA, which was really helpful in getting this out to its constituents and getting that feedback that we might not have had if we hadn't gone this route. And of course, our block clubs, which have been helpful, and our CAC members who are promoting that. And, you know, we're going to go to the next slide where we put it all on a map because that's what everybody likes. But again, I just can't thank everybody enough for being able to really help us get this outreach and continue to learn about what's important to folks in the city of Gary. So here's our survey output by zip code, something that was very important. And Deb Bacchus, our project manager, took great pride in making sure that we put this together to show a distribution across the city. We do want to get different viewpoints. Not all parts of the city are the same. There are different challenges in different places. Deb, I'll pause in case you'd like to say anything about the survey outputs.
Sure, I'll say a few words. We put a tremendous amount of effort into trying to make sure we were hearing the voices across the entire city. And there's, as Wendy indicated, it's difficult to reach everybody. Different personalities and types of communities across our city. And I think we ended up doing a good job, though of course we'd love to have thousands and thousands of more people participate. And we need to thank for helping us out in getting the word out and getting so many surveys and distributed across the city. Many members are CAC, so the GPTC was instrumental in getting the word out in their buses and at the Metro Center. The Urban League, the Federation of Block Clubs was extremely instrumental in reaching out to those 98 block clubs they've got deployed across the city and alerting them that the surveys were available and delivering paper surveys as needed. The Purdue Extension, I think Erin is on as well tonight, Health and Wellness Group, pushed out to their community in education, and the churches pushed out the availability of the surveys. Gary Housing Authority, as was mentioned by Wendy, instrumental in getting a couple of our housing establishments to fill out many surveys for us. Penelope Love, Etna Manor Revitalization, always pushed out to her constituents, the schools as well. So we're really very grateful for our community advisory committee and the team's efforts to try and hear as many voices as possible. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deb. And what have we learned? It's been interesting, and we're continuing to synthesize this, and will so as we develop the draft plan. But, for those of you that participated, we really were trying to make sure that we clarified obstacles. What are the things that are getting in the way of getting out there and enjoying, whether you're biking or you're walking, or you're doing it for leisure, or if you got to get to work. Okay, so what are these barriers look like? And we've had a lot of different feedback, but obviously, sidewalks and the condition of sidewalks and the condition of the roads and safety and the transit connectivity all play a role, right? But it's nice to see it reflected, not just one-dimensional data, but actually listening and being able to read comments from folks. It's just been really great, eye-opening. I mentioned that in our MetroQuest survey that there was an interactive mapping exercise, which is great. And several people hung in there with us and actually played with the maps and put information on them. So we want to honor that. But, really looking at that bike and walk destination, you leave your home and you do what? You're going somewhere for a purpose. What is that purpose and how are you getting there? And so that's been great to be able to actually put those locations on a map, like what you see in front of you. Safety concerns, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but safety is a big part of bicycle and pedestrian planning. We had over 90 locations identified through various sources, a lot of them along major thoroughfares. You're not surprised by that. Broadway, okay, 4th and 5th near the interstate. So, but it's nice to have these solidified. And again, the more data, the more robust, the more we can make the case of what the need is. I mentioned our Survey Monkey went out to a huge network of folks. And again, that kind of that validation, but also making sure that we're looking at ADA and folks mentioning accessibility and to the bikes and trails, but also to public transit, and making all of that system work better in harmony, which is what I believe everybody wants. And then our paper surveys, analog, again, a lot of these coming from our friends at GHA and through the block clubs, and reaching folks that maybe have a different demographic or mobility, particularly our senior citizens. How they get around and where they want to go and why they want to go there may be different than what some of the young folks are doing. And it's very important that we understand that and incorporate that into the information as we move forward. So I mentioned we've had a good amount of success, and again, thanking the team and everyone involved. You know, we've had over 1,100 hits on our Reinvest Gary website. We've got 600 plus Facebook followers. Over 700 folks looked at the previous meeting. Maybe we'll top that here with forum number 2. And again, the CAC member outreach. There's been some radio show participation. I know Deb was recently on the radio, and I know the mayor has been supportive and other folks in the communication department. You know, in the fall and again in the spring, when folks have been out and about, we've been out and about too, telling them what we've been doing and trying to solicit interest and feedback. GPTC again, and then talking a little bit about the Google class, which I'm going to talk about here for a second. So Google class, here's an interesting outreach tool that we decided to use, and it's just been fascinating, and we'll look forward to reporting out. But basically, the idea of how do we reach predominantly a tool for youth, young people in the city, students. You know, what are they seeing from their perspective? How do they get to school? What do they see around their school? And knowing then we also have Indiana University. What do those students think? And so we've developed this Google class, again, thanks to Vocart and the whole team for getting it put together. It's open enrollment. Anyone can take it though. You don't just have to be a student. Anyone can take it. And we've got over 180 students and folks are involved right now. And major thanks to the charter school, the Dunes, over the past week for allowing us to come in and talk through that. But, you know, the Gary Public School Corporation, we've gotten this word out and we're getting some good traction. Again, the survey is open. The Google class is open through the end of the month. So we'll look forward to finishing up strong here in the next 2 weeks and being able to report out what we've heard from those folks who took the class. And I'm going to pause just for a second. We have probably about 10 more slides, so I will say hang in there. I am looking at our comment feed and our group chat, so I think we're good. We're live, we're moving. We'll go ahead and get through the rest of our slides and then start to see what kind of feedback and comments we might be receiving. Okay, so going into the draft plan. You know, let me say first and foremost that the idea of this plan is not that it sits on a shelf and nobody ever looks at it, because I can tell you as someone who's done this for 25 years, that happens. That's not what we want to happen here. And a lot of planning is moving away from that. You know, the idea of having more of a living document that is really used to be able to promote change and to be able to track progress. So we are in the midst of the draft plan and hope to have it available to all of you in May to be able to comment on. I'm giving you a preview to our next steps. This plan's intention is to bring all of this together in a professional way, in a way that's standard with the industry and reaches a lot of audiences relative to existing conditions and safety and walkability. How do we make the city more walkable? How do we make it more bikeable? How do we make it safer altogether? How do we get folks out and about in our pedestrian zones and the places where we want to be for the future plans that we have? And what are those key strategies that get us there? So again, we talked about transit. Again, can't underestimate the connectivity to transit. Again, having this wonderful opportunity. We've learned some pretty interesting statistics as we go along, but you know, over 50% of our schools are within a quarter mile of a bus stop. That's an empowering opportunity, traffic and how folks get around. GPTC had over 800,000 riders in 2018. That's an incredible number. And I'm sure that they are looking to beating that number in the years to come. As you would imagine, pedestrian activity is high in transit-oriented development areas. People are walking to the bus stop. People are getting off the bus stop. They are going to a destination. They're going to their next destination or going home. So anywhere where you have sidewalks and major thoroughfares, think about you're going to grab a sandwich, you're going to the grocery store, you're running errands, picking up kids from school, perhaps. And the first and last mile, as we've talked before, and safe routes to school. And all of this matters as existing condition because we need to pull it into one framework so that we can begin to really look at the projects, and it will help us prioritize projects as we move forward. I mentioned safety, again, cannot be understated. You know, the safety data comes from a variety of sources, including the Indiana Indiana Department of Transportation provides a lot of this information. NERC was kind enough to help pass along the information as well. And then obviously folks that participated in our various surveys added into this in terms of area of safety concern. And you can see the dots on the map give us a great sense of where we've not only had reported official accidents, but where other folks are saying, hey, things here aren't so great either. And this helps us, again, pull this into the existing conditions so that we can consider and prioritize projects. One of the things that we do in bicycle and pedestrian planning is we focus a lot on walkability and bike scores. And the plan will talk about walkability and bike scores throughout the city, including how easily folks can get around, okay, based on the amenities and the condition of attributes there. As you can imagine right now, some of the best walkability is along Broadway. We've got good sidewalks. There's folks out and about. There's various nodes, particularly around IUN. But we also have lots of open trails and bikeable streets and incredible parks, including our new national park, just our fabulous lake shore, and just our general open space. So we'll be talking more about this, but the idea is better walkability, higher bike scores. That's what we're shooting for. Some of the analysis, again, that we'll be presenting more as we go along and will be in the plan is this idea of pedestrian generating zones. Where are these places that either now or in the future are going to generate this activity, right? That we both either have and we want to retain or we want more of. And again, you can see just the dots on the map will give you an idea where are these places around the transit stops, right? The three red bubbles that you see toward the north or to the top of your screen are around the South Shore stations, okay, as to be expected, or further south along Broadway around IUN. So what's great about this analysis is getting all of that data, anecdotal data, and putting it in a way that starts to make sense. So of course, in the future, as our plans continue to develop, we can increase the zones and see more, which means more people are walking and biking and using transit. This is just a snapshot of the city. The entire city is broken down in these pedestrian generating zones. And you can see something like downtown along the left has a pretty good walkability score, a good bike score. You can get the idea of kind of what's generating these zones. And then you can also see, you know, a neighborhood like Tolliston that maybe doesn't have as high of a bike score, doesn't have as high of a walkability score. And why is that? What can be done about that? Is that something that the community is more interested in? So it's great to have the overview as well as the neighborhood snapshot. And ultimately, this culminates in one of the most important things. And what is the vision? What are the projects that we're talking about? What are we talking about actually doing? And how do we prioritize this? And this is what is in progress, building upon the 2019 comprehensive plan. But making sure, again, that we drill down into those neighborhood possibilities. The big projects are important. The small projects are important. Broadway matters, okay? Ridge Road still matters. 15th, 11th, Lake Street, all throughout the city. And I'm almost done talking, so you'll be glad. But one of the things that's most important here is the strategies. How do we do it? You know, we talk a lot about change and projects, but how do you get that done? Well, good planning is helpful, I can tell you that, and we're on our way to get that done. But really enhancing programming. What kind of policies do we need? What kind of partnerships do we need to get this stuff done? Improving our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure all across the board is a huge priority, and it's going to be a priority statewide and nationwide. And you'll be hearing that in the coming months as you see what is coming out for federal, state, and private funding. We do have to prioritize key corridors and transit routes. We have huge need in this big city, and we don't have enough money and funding to do all of it. So how do we prioritize so that we can get going, build momentum so that more good projects can come in? These holistic connections really matter. Public health is incredibly important, and building social equity. If we've got parts of the city where maybe there is a low bike score or a low walkability score, what do we do about that? We don't want people to be left behind. We want them to be included. Tying into these regional networks and filling those gaps are critical. And I can tell you people across Northwest Indiana are paying a lot of attention to that, including our friends at the National Park Service, who have been a great partner in what we've been trying to do. But again, one of the things that I know that Deb and the team wanted to focus on here is honoring big projects and small projects. You know, we want the big regional scale projects and initiatives. You know, something like Gary Elevate, where we're really talking about, and go back to the other map, but where we're talking about economic development trails for economic development, really looking at, you know, something like the 606, okay, in Chicago. How do we use what we have in a transformative way? But how do we also stay practical while we're being visionary? Right. So it's like, hey, I want to do, you know, maybe somebody wants to do something about Grand Boulevard, or maybe when somebody wants to do something about an intersection. How do we get that done as well in an effective way while we're still trying to do all the big stuff? And most importantly, is positioning us for success and funding to do those things. So what I'm going to do is pause so we can look at our chat feature, and I'm sure you've heard quite enough from me. And so we'll take a look here and see what kind of feedback we're getting. And I will walk us through that. I'm going to do the chat questions that I can see, and then Gretchen, I'll probably reach out to you to see what you're hearing and seeing on Facebook Live. Okay. So a couple of the questions we have here is yes, and we are live. So that's pretty exciting. Effects of violence and the health effects. Absolutely. So let me say, generally speaking, I'll go back to that slide. Oh, don't want to make anybody sick. Community health. To your point, safety is a big term, and part of what falls under that safety is, to a certain degree, this idea of are you safe when you're traveling? You know, violence. Is it dark? We've gotten a lot of comments about lighting, and lighting is a huge element of safety, right? And so it'd be great to shine more lights on in the city of Gary. And I think that's another thing that this plan is going to recommend. That will go a long way into helping create a safer space for everybody to be in. And the health effects, absolutely. We want to use this plan as an opportunity to make sure that these health characteristics that are put out on a regular basis are shown in this document as well. And as we build on that body of work, be able to get that message out. I know that the Gary Public Health Department is very, very interested in that, as is the State Department of Health. So I hope that that helps to answer the question. The next question I have is to download the plan. Yes, you will be able to download the plan. You can download the presentation, you can download the first presentation, and you too will be able to download the plan as soon as it is available. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the next few minutes. So I hope that you will, because we want as many comments as we can get. Okay, so I see a question on the Marquette Trail, you know, always popular topic, isn't it? Deb and I talk about this project on a regular basis. It is one of the key priorities. The city is working diligently on analysis, and we've made some good strides, particularly for the section between Grand and Lake Street, which I know is of interest, and we'll be able to talk more about that in the coming months. But we are also diligently working on the rest of the trail, and in fact have been looking quite a bit at the west end and how we can make sure we have the most feasible route possible, as well as continuing on to make sure the entire trail is connected. So more good news, I hope, to come in the following weeks and months about the Marquette Trail. Thank you for asking. Oh, interesting. So we have a question on social media about, for public safety, will public police officers be trained on bicycles, or will they be able to drive in with police vehicles? And will it to get in and out in case they need to be transported from the hospital? Interesting. So We haven't really talked about that level of training, but I'm glad that you brought it up. It's something that we can definitely give some additional consideration to, or maybe it's something that needs to be thought about in the next stages of development. So great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I always like when I get something new. And thank you, David Wright. Yes, turn the lights on in the city. I think we all agree with that. And I know that GPTC has received a lot of comments on lighting as well, because sometimes it's even just a perception thing. And perception is reality when it's safety driven. And we know that from human behavior. So thank you, David. I concur. We need to keep working on getting the lights turned on. Oh, okay. So we have some interest in the Little Calumet Bike Trail. And I'm, depending on what you refer to as the Little Calumet Bike Trail, you know, one of the challenges we have in our regional trail network is there's a lot of names for different segments of the trail. And I'm sure you understand too. I do believe you're talking about the bike trail along the levee. I hope. You can clarify for me, Mr. Henry, if I've got that wrong. But obviously that is built into our mapping. So that we can make sure that we keep track of that project and its conditions. Some of these trails exist already, but they could use to be enhanced, right? Taken to that next level, whether it's being improving the trail bed or even paving. So thank you. Yes, all of the trails, particularly the levee trail, is really interesting. So we've got, all right, this is great. So let me make sure I'm staying up on this. Will neighborhoods or zones be connected to their parks through the city, throughout the city? Well, ultimately, we certainly hope so. You know, one of the evolving elements of the city is parkland. The city has a great number of green space and parks. And I know that the park department is working diligently on making decisions about what parks stay active, what parks maybe go inactive or more passive. And that the Parks Master Plan is something that is hopeful for future development. So we'll keep an eye on that. But ultimately, yes, more connectivity between bikes, trails, bike lanes, parks, schools, and other amenities is the ultimate goal. The Little Cow Trail is wonderful. I'm gonna say yes, Michelle Robinson. I agree with you. Thank you. Let's see, I'm concerned that the new bike path on Lake Street is not understood. Motorists think the bike stops are for cars and they stop in the wrong places. Yes, cars are also using the bike trail for parking. Yes, I've seen that too. When new bike ped transportation options are introduced, they need to be a lot of education. I'm going to stop right there and say absolutely. You know, we talk a lot about wayfaring, you know, signage, but it isn't just that. It's understanding how to use the, because it is different. And this is also a communities and more education and more outreach about how a circle track is supposed to work, for example. And maybe having a little bit more enforcement where, you know, folks do their best to encourage people or course correct people in a way that says, hey, I know you used to park here, but you can't do that anymore. You know, that's part of that neighborhood level effort. But your point is well taken. And growth, you know, growth does bring change. And that means how we explain to people and how we use our systems as well. And we know that other communities have had that challenge over the years, including downtown Chicago. If anybody's driven down there with the integrated bike lanes, those folks are brave. But they've been at it a long time. So we hope to be able to pick up our efforts as well. Thank you for that comment. I referenced the 606. Yes, I did. Can I speak to the strategy about addressing gentrification and displacement as it relates to the plans for economic development projects? It's been a major point of contention for longer term and legacy residents. It is. It absolutely is. As with any major redevelopment project and initiative, and trails are no different. The idea of how this trail is planned and what is that economic strategy at a neighborhood level moving forward is, your point is exactly well taken. And so as a project like Gary Elevate, and we'll be talking more about that in the coming months too, moves forward, it's incredibly important that it also be grassroots, that it be led from the city perspective as well, because you're right. How do you make sure that you've got redevelopment and equity and interest from all kinds of different parties? And it's a challenge to manage that kind of effort. But I think putting it out there is something that we already know is an issue, and lesson learned from other projects, and being honest about it, about what it means in this community, is the best thing you can do to keep people enlightened and to make sure that intended and unintended consequences are considered during the project development process. So thank you for bringing that up, and we hope that you'll work with us as we move forward with that project too. I also see, yes, in general, we talked about marking and signage and even being able to get on a Google map and say, where's the bike route, right? We don't have these things today. And the idea in the plan is to make sure that we identify them so that we can do those projects. To your point of being, I see another one from Michelle about being marked and well mapped. And there's a lot of that and a lot more, and would love to hear that feedback on specific locations now and as the plan develops so that we can call those out. But again, these are going to be living documents. So this isn't the only chance that you or anyone will get to be able to contribute to the dialogue about how we make things better and what projects get funded, including things like signage. Ideally, I mean, depending on how the question here is, could one project or neighborhood be developed and then implemented and then connected to each other? Again, ideally, yes. But again, we have 57 square miles and projects of varying scales. So depending on the scale of the project, but it will determine how connected it is in the short term to an adjacent project. But I think we do want to look for connectivity and adjacency so that we get kind of growth of scale as we go forward. So projects should be layered and should take place throughout the city to build a stronger network. Will the Oak Savannah Trail line up with the trail network in Gary? Well, we sure hope so. Again, it's this idea of interconnectivity. As for those of you, I'm going to go, bear with me as I scroll. Put this up. Okay, so the Oak Savannah, do you see this blue line along here, along the bottom of our map? That's the area of the Oak Savannah Trail. And so, and then you can see to the north, the hot pink lines, if you will. Thank you, Deb, for making our map. Things stand out as they need to. Those are the lines for the Marquette Trail and the Gary Elevate. So you can see we've got east-west. How about north-south? How do we connect north-south as well as east-west to the grid within the city and then beyond? It's definitely a project and one that needs to be highlighted in our plan. Okay. Link to the Lackawanna. Yeah, link to all of them, right? There's a lot of exciting trail work being done in Northwest Indiana, and the connectivity is amazing. And so we want to be part of that, and that's something that we're definitely targeting. And there's lots of trails and connections off this map that we didn't go in here tonight, but we are looking at that connectivity to all the major trails. Gary Elevate. Okay, am I talking about an elevated trail? Well, yeah, we'll talk about it for a second. So do you see up on the screen where, again, I'm drawing you to the hot pink lines, right? The east-west going from near the Gary Chicago Airport. You can see that dotted line, and that's the proposed preliminary route for the Marquette Trail as it's envisioned, right? And we're still working on it. How do we get the most feasible route? But as you can see, you come off and you see this dashed dotted line dip down. This is following abandoned rail line, or I will say non-used rail line. And part of this is elevated if you've been over there. So we're coming down by 11th. You've seen where that old elevated trail still exists. Yes, that is the area that we're talking about. Very exciting, complex, but that is the area that we're talking about for the elevated trail. And I hope that makes sense. And I hope that you'll hear more about it as we go forward. There's a lot of excitement about that initiative. Let's see, here's a good one. What type of available and current funding sources are being leveraged to spearhead some of these ideas? Or are many of these projects contingent upon funding acquisition? Well, let me say that it's a really exciting time to be looking at bike ped and trail money connected to health. And we're keeping our eyes on it so that we can begin to target any and all available funds or help others. You know, we have great community groups in the city. We have a lot of people who are trying to do good work, and they're going after grants as well. And so we want everyone to be empowered and hopefully connected to the same data sets so that we can move forward in a way that is harmonized. Many projects still require a match. So in that case, you know, the city is also looking at resources and how will it provide its portion of funding to go forward. So all of that will be part of the draft plan, and all of that is part of what we're working on now and creating a way to prioritize at least city efforts going forward. And so more on that, but it is exciting. And there's going to be a lot more coming out, and I'd say in the next 8 months. Stay tuned. The Oak Savannah Trail is a gem, another one of several, but you're absolutely right, and takes us through a different part of the city because, again, it's a big place. We have incredible ecosystem, incredible green space, lots of historic resources that we don't talk enough about. And so we'll be able to, again, look at that big picture, and that's the idea. So that is what I see. Oh, wait. Is the goal to connect near the lakefront from the south side of Chicago to Michigan City? Well, ultimately, and beyond, I hope that yes, looking at that connectivity both at the eastern edge and the western end, and you know, down on the western side, there's a lot of interesting things going on in the Calumet Heritage area, and even along throughout Pullman. We live in a fascinating place, and these places on the other side of in Chicago and South Chicago aren't that far away. And then again, neither is Michigan. It's all becoming so much more accessible, especially with our exciting double tracking project with the South Shore, which would be an incredible opportunity for everybody. Yes, people want to see the maps, and I totally understand. So this will all be posted to the project website so that you can see and you can download the maps and see them better. I know it's hard to see some of the detail, especially at the scale, so I apologize. But the idea is to give you a sense of that. And again, there will be more maps also available in the draft plan when it's available to be downloaded. And we'll do our best to keep those file sizes manageable so everybody can download what they'd like to look at or be able to look at it on the screen. Let's see, will there be electric car charging stations? Well, it's not something that we've specifically outlaid in this plan, but I know that it's a very popular topic throughout the region and definitely something that we can think about. I know in the green infrastructure plan, it was talked about. Interesting concept. Thank you for bringing it up. I hadn't really thought about that. Can I explain flexible residential? Okay, what you're seeing, that is an underlay on the map that's in front of you. And that's part of the future land use designation in the comprehensive plan, acknowledging that we're going to continue to have residential neighborhoods, but of different densities, depending on where you are in a particular neighborhood. For example, you know, Glen Park place, right? And you can break it up into west and east, and still it's a big place. So that's the idea behind the land use. And there's more information about the land use classifications, including flexible residential, in the larger comprehensive plan that I mentioned of our meeting. And that should be able to provide some additional information. And that is what I see in front of me. Gretchen, is there anything I've missed that's been going on behind the scenes? No, everything seems to be coming in through here. Wonderful. Okay. So I know that there's a lot of folks on the phone, and I know that everyone has been very patient. I really appreciate all of these comments. These were good. Yes, Mr. Mitch Barloga is involved. He may very well even be on the call with us today, as far as I know, but he's been busy as of late. But yes, he is. And how can you get access to the map? It will be up on the website. Can share via social media channels. We also have an email address. Bear with me. I will go back to that slide so that you can make a request, or we can direct you to where you can download the map. Hold on. Here we go. There you go. And thank you. Yes, you can subscribe to our mailing list and to our website, and then you'll get project updates as well. Nothing beats a good map. All righty. So, would love to hear any other thoughts or questions or comments. We've gotten some really great feedback. I sincerely appreciate that. And it's a lot to absorb. Please don't think I expect you to know all of this and to put it all on paper right now. I hope that you'll continue to think about this and how you can contribute and be able to stay tuned as we finish. I'm going to go down and wrap us up here now. Again, bear with me. Oh, it got taken out. Hold on. I love my scrolling. Where are we? Here we are. So again, the idea is we will have another community advisory group meeting probably in May, and really pushing to get our draft plan out in May before Memorial Day so that everyone can see, download, comment, and participate, including seeing all the maps, and to give us feedback so that we can wrap that up and take our efforts to the Gary Common Council for their input and hopefully adoption. So that is our program for this evening. And again, I just cannot think, it's great to see all the participation up on the screen. And thank you to our CAC members. I see you out there, and thank you for participating. Always good to have you with us. We couldn't do it without you, all of you actually, and your interest. So please tell your friends. We're happy to get the word out, happy to share our information, and look forward to more projects, more progress for everybody to get around better. Thank you for joining us this evening. We hope to hear from you again through our various mechanisms, and stay tuned for updates. Deb, would you like to provide any closing thoughts? Thank you to Gretchen behind the scenes.
No, just good job. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for all of you who contributed to the surveys and provided us input, and the wonderful questions you provided for us this evening. Keep them coming. We really appreciate it.
You bet. And stay tuned for more fun things. Enjoy your evening and be safe. We hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you.